guys, welcome to Beneath the Impact podcast. Today I'm joined here with one and only Sam Mwamburi. So today we'll be speaking more or less how do you integrate data or rather digital transformation within your organization. By digital transformation, what you're looking at is one, data analytics part of things. So by data analytics, those are the nice dashboards which you like to look at and maybe machine learning models, such things. But secondly, also maybe apps if you are more inclined towards that as well. So over to you, Sam. Let us know who you are, what you do. Best, yeah.
Thanks, Dennis, for the introduction and also for having me on your podcast.
Yeah.
So my name is Samuel Mwamburi. I currently work at UNEP as a data analytics consultant. I have 7 years of experience in the industry, but my background was in computer science and artificial intelligence academically. So I'm both conversant with software development academically and data analysis through industry experience. That's basically my experience thus far. It's 7 years. I can go more in depth as we talk, but in a nutshell, that's it.
So probably I'll start with demystifying the word digital transformation, because probably this might be a complex word, but it's not really complex. So what is digital transformation according to you, and especially within an organization setting?
Okay, thanks. In my opinion, digital transformation refers to the enhancement of processes, organizational processes, or integration of cutting-edge technology in your work. So I think of it, not only as developing software or including data analytics or ChatGPT in your work, but also organizational change, like change management, changing the way people think about technology and how useful it would be in their processes, in the work that they do. Interestingly, one of the consultancies that I did required, they had the tagline digital transformation under one of the outputs or outcomes I was supposed to achieve. You go in thinking that you're going to develop a dashboard or introduce a new tool and then that's it, but it's mostly working with people to enable them perform up to speed, adding this additional component of awareness of like digital technology can be useful to the work. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because you're bringing up aspects, one in terms of operationalization and maybe delivery of services and products to customers, but also secondly, also you're bringing another good and quite important aspect of organizational culture, which I believe most people, when they're thinking digital transformation, they are not having that culture in mind at first, which probably we shall delve deeper on what that looks like, and maybe our experiences in terms of building that culture, and maybe having also the products and no culture, how that looks like as well. So probably if an organization wants to start on digital transformation, one of the first things I'm sure it will come up is a dashboard. Probably tell us more or less, how do you envision an organization that is interested in embedding maybe a dashboard, maybe these different digital aspects? What steps should they take at first?
The first step as an individual who is trying to achieve digital transformation within an organization, especially now coming into the organization, you have a fresh perspective and there's something you're bringing to the table, is to first take a step back and observe the ecosystem. how are people currently working? What sort of tools are they using? Could be digital tools, could be traditional tools. So taking a step back allows you to appreciate the ecosystem and certain aspects of it which may, signify where you are at the moment, who you're working with, what sort of things can be changed, and how you can then pitch an updated solution to them, rather than coming in heavy-handed with, I know a better way of doing this, and this is how it can be changed. Yes, you may have done similar processes before, but each organization works differently. So step one, observe. Step two is see how your design or architect the solution hand in hand with the stakeholder, or see how your design fits into the ecosystem. See what parts can be changed. So work hand in hand with the stakeholder during the design phase, because before, and this is a motto I've had with quite a number of tech companies and NGOs, is 70% of developing solutions is in the design. I think it comes from a quote of sharpening the axe. 70% of cutting down the tree. They can cut it once. So include the stakeholders in the discussion on what you're planning. And then as you're doing that, you can also be researching and seeing whether certain components that you want to introduce will fit in well with the path that you're trying to take. So also the selection process of whatever tools and new technologies you're trying to introduce, each of them has some type of cost benefit in terms of how easy it will be to integrate, and also what the budget of the stakeholder will be. And the last and easy part, and part that all techies enjoy, is actually developing the solution. That's the easy part. After everything is aligned, you can then come in with your solution, and there's always iterate. I don't think that work ends, probably until your contract ends, but really it's an iterative process. You can it's always going back to the beginning and understanding how certain things can be modified to work better for people. But this is a 4-step process that I feel I've learned to understand and appreciate over time, that has less friction.
Yeah, sure. I believe also my process is a bit similar, because at first I have to first understand the client and especially what they work on, what is working, what is not working. By what is not working, I'm looking more or less in terms of what is it costing them, in terms of either much time, much money. So what is it costing them to do the things the way they do? And maybe, it's that step process, because after that is second is more or less building with now the client, whereby we have like low fidelity kind of things, but more or less I will start especially at the user interface before going so far, because more or less the client understand what they will see. They won't understand what the the database will do, the automations will do. That's less of their business, but more or less understand what they see. Then after we have agreed what we see, we go now step back in the architecture in terms of how will this database look like, how will they connect, and stuff like that as well, which is quite interesting as well. That's one of the most interesting things I usually do, is develop database, the automations. Then also now the development part now. That's usually another interesting part also, whereby you sit down, code. Then also there is the handover process, which probably
indeed.
we shall get into that as well. Though one of the things that probably I've come to appreciate is, especially working with organizations that they know, or rather at least they have figured out, they have a plan in terms of what is digital transformation to them. And one thing that I've seen, or rather I'll categorize, is more digital transformation for service delivery, So, for example, in a context that will look like, how will Jumia bring food to my doorstep? That's because that's a restaurant business anyway, but you delivering food to somebody, it might be digitalized. So there is aspect of me ordering through a phone, getting a confirmation, seeing where the rider is at, and maybe it coming here. So having that journey and seeing this product will be delivered in this way. And that's quite important. But also the other most important one is more or less now the operational side of things. So for example, HR, the one which you have mentioned, agreements, for example, because companies need to do agreements. So how do you do that agreements, for example, with different clients as well? So having that and having it in mind also, it's quite a good thing, especially if they have figured out which aspects, not how it will be implemented, but maybe the facets of it. So which aspects will be implemented. Maybe I want HR to be implemented. We have these processes in place. And because one thing that I've learned is, especially for digital transformation, if there's no process, especially for operational side, if there's no process, even the service delivery, if there's no process, it will be quite hard for, I'm not so sure whether you have had that experience, but yeah, if there are no processes, we have to start from creating a process and agreeing at that.
That's true.
Yeah, so having processes in place, then we see how do we digitalize this process, yeah.
I'd like to say there's something very important that you've mentioned, brought about another idea in my mind, is when you were talking about, say, digital transformation or enhancement of processes in a certain industry. You mentioned Jumia and delivery of products, or maybe Glovo and delivery of food to your house, is also the aspect of domain understanding. So right now we have a proliferation of data analysts. Yeah? People go to school to just study data analysis. And a lot of people who study data analysis, at least within my circle, people who did, like me, computing or computer science or software engineering in undergraduate, which means that your domain knowledge is in technology. Thing is, when you go into the real world, you're integrated into an organization that perhaps, whose basis or foundation isn't necessarily in technology or developing technological tools. How does the work currently operate, or it's providing the respect to that particular field? Say like statistics and machine learning, because underneath machine learning it's basically statistics. Taking the time to understand the underlying component makes you a stronger analyst, makes you a better contributor to that field, I believe, as compared to I know how to use a particular tool, and I'm going to figure out how to integrate that tool in whatever. I know how to build an app, and I'm going to find a way for people to use this app in a certain, domain. To someone who has a hammer, everything is a nail. It's something I just thought about, and I thought I would bring out.
You have taken me back, because I recall when we started working on this this field. Recall especially the finance aspect. Right now, I believe when I'm talking to my accountant, we usually have that conversation of things finance, and they wonder. But one of the reasons why was because we are creating these platforms for monitoring finance. We had to understand how this domain expertise of finance,
what an expenditure is.
Because at first we are just knowing money in, money out, but also there's aspects of what kind of money in, how should you spend this money in,
what a commitment means.
So such aspect was quite good, and I believe at that time one of the things that assisted us, because it's even having that person to show you or rather guide you, because this is like what do you call it, a crash course. Because at first, most of us, we don't have the leeway of time. We need to understand, but we don't have that leeway of time, especially, and it's a crash course which we need to do. And it's a very short crash course. So having, for example, the different finance experts who are guiding us to understand what is a commitment. And we are going there like 5 times, trying, this is commitment.
Exactly.
So having that person to guide us actually was quite, I believe, from my side, it assisted me. And also the point of observation, seeing how the different steps were going, but also having these documents which were documenting the process. Like right now, that's usually one of the first steps which we usually talk with the client before we start, is what are the processes? Have you documented these processes? Let me see. Because that time is when we learned on, okay, because also, for example, the domain finance might be implemented differently on different organizations depending with how they do finance and the philosophy areas where they come. And that's where the process comes in handy, especially is understanding now these people, how do they do finance. And probably if they don't, we usually start from there. Let's develop a process, which now you'll get acquainted to that first. Then we see how do we systemize this process. So that's, you have taken me back.
No, thank you. It just came in fresh in my mind. I had recently attended a symposium. It was actually integration of, tighter integration of technology in the soil sector. I thought I knew a little bit about soil and farming, but now going to a place where everyone else is a farmer and, people who are going there with a technology background, you're 2 or 3, it really allows you, to take a step back and appreciate the field and the beauty of the science itself and the process that happens, without technology, because it's another field that has a high proliferation, I think, also, because it's Kenya. Agriculture is, it's a big sector. It accounts for a lot of our wealth as a country, and then it was also, I guess, an under. Can I call it? It's a sector that had a little integration until recently, where now there are a number of companies and startups who are trying to see how they can bring value through, mobile apps to inform farmers on certain things, on the weather, not knowing that if someone has been in the sector, they have a certain understanding of how, the weather systems work, how soil looks like, and so on. But they have unique challenges you will only understand if you do a little bit of extensive reading into the field, trying to see what are the novel issues that farmers in the 21st century in this part of the world have that other places, do not have. It takes a little bit of effort from you coming from a technology background. But so it was a very valuable and worthwhile experience personally, and I thought, so that it clicked with what you brought up.
And I believe that's the reason why our field is sometimes interesting, because we kind of need to interact with different problems and learn and relearn some aspects, because different, for example, going to agriculture, it's even broad, because even like some few days ago I was looking in terms of food systems, and so trying to dig deep into food systems, it was also quite an interesting field. and learning how those, what are these issues around that, and maybe what kind of offering can it be done within that aspect. It's quite an interesting one. Tell us more about now the architecture, and how do you interact with especially clients, or rather the people you're assisting to build up these architectures?
When it comes to the design of the architecture, I am big on using and utilizing tools which are new. So I'll do my research on seeing what novel tools can bring the most value at the lowest cost. A lot of stakeholders and clients are usually interested in automating a lot of their processes, making them hands-off, which is the reason why I believe a lot explore digital technologies in the first place. It's the understanding or what has been relayed to them that their work will be made easier. So tools evolve very quickly. At the time of the engagement, trying to understand what is out there, what will bring the most value, and will be easy to afford and integrate. So there's all the rage about open source at the moment. These are platforms that are curated by individuals in the industry. With the understanding of there's a public contribution to this tool, for it to not be sold to someone who wishes to utilize it for their work. So that's usually my frame of reference, doing my research on what's available, seeing the capacity that both the organization and I personally have to be able to maintain and move forward from it, and also seeing whether during the research phase, whether the use case trying to solve works well, beyond my engagement with said client or said organization. So here you're trying to bring the most value with the least friction or least bottlenecks possible. A lot of times you find that these platforms and tools are available, and perhaps so many other people are using them in the same space. So it's just a matter of now bringing or enlightening people you're working with towards these, and so that's the research part of it. But then there's also the design, of which, as I'd mentioned earlier, is very iterative, meaning that your first version may not be perfect, but it should be a semblance of what it is that you're trying to achieve, minimum viable product.
Yeah.
It's funny, I think 2 days ago I was reading this quote by Reid Hoffman, the guy who did LinkedIn, was saying if the first product that you get out of the door is perfect, you took too long to ship it. Meaning that you want to have something as soon as possible for people to then, appreciate and understand where it is you're trying to lead them and take them in terms of building up their, capacity, efficiency, or what have you're trying to bring to the organization. And then after that, you can go back and redesign. So this works for anything. It works for mobile apps. It works for dashboards. It works for processes. Most times you'll have only a niche, group of people that you're testing it with, and so you want to ship out, product as early as possible to have, the process move quickly, and have the stakeholder also see the value you're bringing. So speed works as a value, as an advantage there. And also during the design phase. Now, this is specific now not just to digital transformation, but to data. The field that I'm very familiar with is also getting a good understanding of perhaps the process that you're trying to do, maybe it's a data analytics pipeline, what sort of data, the digital aspect that you're working with, so in this case it's data, it also dictates a lot of how you're going to design this.
I've just realized I've not told people what is architecture. I'll try to define it for them.
Fair enough, yeah.
So architecture is basically like when you're in construction, there you get an architect and draws that system the way it will look like. So in this, especially in digital transformation, the architecture is how that particular system will look like. By looking like there are two, or I'll say now three, kind of phases. The first phase is the user interface. So by user interface is the thing that you'll see. So either through your phone, through the TV, or whatever, the thing that you'll be interacting with and seeing that. Then also we have the second phase, which is the database, so where that data will be stored. But now these days, including this as a third phase, it's more or less now the automations as well. Mm-hmm. So basically how these, because sometimes you need some automation to do some sort of things. Mm-hmm. So the different automations that will be around that may be triggered by either the database or the user interface, or even now an automation kind of thing that will be in between there to change either the data or the thing that you're seeing, or both at that same time. So that's usually the automation, or rather the architecture.
Yeah.
So I hope we are not so complex with
it. We took a turn there and then started going into layers and components and so on.
Yeah.
But it's a basic. If it's acceptable, to use an actual example.
Yeah.
People in the data analytics field, you hear them mentioning ELT or ETL a lot, the extract, load, transform architecture. Yeah, that kind of plays into it. And then there's different tools that can help you achieve this, and different ways you can structure the what you've mentioned as the database interface and automation aspect of it to play around with the various components that you have within that system.
So I think the most important, sometimes, especially when designing, it's even within that step back, because when you are looking at the issue, these days I love breaking the issue into small bits as well. That's also assists, because, for example, thinking of an HR system, an HR system is not just an HR system, it's small components of it. So, for example, hiring, contracts, and then after contracts you have another layer of maybe performance evaluation and assessments. You have another element of trainings, for example. Then you have another element of end of contracts, and so basically breaking these into small bits also assists us quite, or rather for myself, it usually assists me, because, for example, the way I handle hiring might be a very different way I handle, for example, performance assessment, because hiring, you are looking in terms of external stakeholders. And then performance assessment is more of internal stakeholders, and maybe has a timeline within it. So, So.
And also the fact that you brought up, external versus internal stakeholders. The people I'm working with and my supervisors would be remiss if I didn't mention, they're also taking a look and understanding organizational policy on handling certain things, especially in the field that you've mentioned, human resource, you're dealing with sensitive data. That also plays into the architecture that you design. Who has access to what during the steps? Maybe certain people are only allowed to view. Other people are allowed to modify, and the people who provide the information. You're looking at 3 different organizational groups here that need to be considered in the design of the platform that you're making early on, and not at the end once it's already been developed. Because I think you were mentioned before we started, data privacy is a big issue. It, should always be in your mind. It's not just about developing nice-looking numbers and visuals, but
one thing also probably that I've seen these days, I'm trying also to categorize things for easy understanding. Also, in terms of most digital transformation stuff, I find them being, what do we call them? Knowledge management kind of problem, which I'm trying to understand these days. So one thing we need to probably think of is, one, data capture. How will you capture this information? For example, from where will you collect? For example, hiring, where will you collect this information, and from who will you be collecting this information from? And that's application, because hiring also has an application phase. There is the, what do you call it, the one where person looks at the different applications. Then after looking, you have the interviewing. Then after interview, we have maybe selection, then consideration and signing of the contract as the end. So basically, that process on its own will have different data captures and at a different point of view. So how do you capture this data? Then the second one is data storage, maybe. Because after capturing it has to be
stored somewhere.
Then also we have the other one is sharing of information. So for example, after I've stored and I've captured it, I tell you, now your application is successfully considered, and maybe now the hiring manager on the other hand, they're seeing this person has have 3 applications, for example, and maybe I need to view. They have those different action points which they need to do. So those 3 aspects, I think it's quite knowledge capture, knowledge storage, and maybe knowledge sharing. Also thinking of, I think you have also mentioned quite an important one. What do you call it? Who checks, or rather who gets the information
access.
at what point. Also that's quite important for you to know who is getting this information, so that at least you have minimal issues that will come up during that time.
No, I feel, I believe, knowledge management is an interesting field, of which, data analysis is part of, like, the wider knowledge management field. Interestingly, when I first got into the field, I thought, like, technology in general, that this was, the perfect place for an introvert to be, because you're just interacting just with a computer or code or whatever. When you're learning about something, it's different from how you actually work or interact with it in practice. But you come to realize that in certain fields like data analysis and knowledge management, you can't work in a vacuum. You have to interact with different parts of the house to get information, change your understanding about it, which will dictate how you're working on moving forward. So, like you mentioned, within I think you'll be hard-pressed to go into a company that doesn't have some form of digital knowledge management practice going on. If you're newly being integrated into it and there's something that you're intended to contribute to in terms of knowledge management or data analysis, chances are you're going to be working with other people or stakeholders within the organization to be able to achieve your goals. Picking up from the HR system is that the HR system could, if it's an application platform, it's a website, has already been developed. And now if that is going to be the source of your information, there's going to be a lot of interaction between you and the software developers of the platform to try and understand, the APIs, application programming interfaces available for you to be able to extract the information. If not, you'll develop it hand in hand with them, because you'll be the primary consumer of that information, to then provide, be it the HR team or senior management with the insights from that platform. So that's, one line of interaction. You'll be interacting with the legal team to see what are their views on certain information being made public or private. With the database team, which in some organizations is a separate one from the analysts, so the people who handle the infrastructure, we call them data engineers, to try and see, even getting access to the platform to begin with, for you then to have the data that's coming from the website be stored on the platform for you to consume and put, the results of the data back in the database. So it's far from, a one-man introverted job. There's a lot of interaction, or one-on-ones with different players, and understanding that ecosystem is key for your success in achieving what you want to. And also, most importantly, with the client, the times will be an internal stakeholder, external. If you're, if you're junior and you're just getting into the field, chances are if it's an external stakeholder, you'll have a project or product manager to interface you with the outside world so that you can focus on your work, give feedback and requirements, and then you interpret that. But if it's internal, you will be engaged in discussions and to see how, you can make the platform that you're working on better. You're trying to make the process that you're working on better. So there's a lot of discussions, just to demystify that part for a lot of people who may be interested in, doing this or getting into this field.
So I believe you had mentioned one part which also I would like to cover. It's more or less now developing a culture aspect. Mm-hmm. So maybe how can organizations develop culture which will embrace the digital space?
This is contentious, as I look at it as culture shift is not a problem that's solely on the bringer of this digital expertise or efficiency and so on. There's also a lot of aspects that management has a hand in encouraging the use and proliferation of, the tools, the organization to demystify how, they work. So there's a lot of advocacy from the higher ups to encourage the change that's supposed to be used. Sometimes, it's a carrot and the stick situation. Sometimes it can be incentivized. This would make our work easier if we are to adopt such and such process and do this. This is the only way we can move forward is if we have all our, information within said tool. For example, you walk into an organization and they already have electronic timesheets, so you don't need to go and punch manually. It's the management play on enforcing the use of digital platforms to achieve certain things, and then from there on, it's it's a boulder rolling down a hill where if someone wanted to come and do analysis, there's minimal effort from their end to say, okay, now this is this new tool that we're going to use so that we can then understand how many people come to work every day, because there was already, the requirement of using certain tools to achieve certain work. But then there's also the aspect from, operational staff and how quickly they are willing to adopt the use of certain tools. I've worked with organizations whereby it's incentivized for you to, think out of the box and innovate and see how you can pick up a certain tool to better improve your work. So management is willing to support the adoption of certain tools, but, staff are also encouraged to, go and innovate and think and research and see how different platforms can improve their day-to-day work. So I see these as the two pieces of the puzzle in culture change from both sides. The people who are the actual users and innovators, and the people who bring the tools on board, and then the people with the support and the cash and the power to incentivize adoption of using said tools in their work, which then come together and can move the organization forward.
Yeah, I think kind of relating to you, because looking in terms of organizations themselves, leadership on because they're the people who can incentivize anyway. So especially having that leadership buy-in can assist in moving these pieces quite fast, because it is more of, as you have mentioned, incentives. Which kind of incentives do you have in place for you to support adoption of, or rather usage of, a certain digital platform, especially operational ones? I believe that's where the rubber meets the road. Yeah. So like them having that, and also leading in terms of that adoption, and also the rest of the users. So for users, I would say two kind of things. So one, in terms of adoption, is how simple is the tool. So because if some tools are quite hard, it means that the adoption percentage will be quite slower over time. So basically having simple tools, and I believe the first steps, which we have mentioned, among the first two steps, it's quite useful for us to design simple tools which will be quite easier for adoption. And also when observing, be sure to look especially in terms of what tools or rather what technological pieces do they have in place. Because if a person do not have a computer and you're trying to create something for them to use a computer, probably you need, as you have mentioned, some incentives for them to build up the computer aspect as well. Or rather buy them computers so that this thing is adapted faster. So having that in mind, also how simple these tools are in consideration with the technology that person has. And then the second part is more or less training as well, which it's quite important, because for them to adopt, they need to know where to click. And if the product is quite simple, there'll be minimal training aspects which will be needed. So for example, I believe there is no parent who was trained to, or rather one of us, not just parents, one of us who was trained to use WhatsApp. It's true. Just a technology which is coming second in nature. So it has minimal training aspects, but there's some training, because when there's a new update, you usually get that WhatsApp message which will tell you there's new update. That's a form of training.
It's funny. It's funny that you mention that. So yesterday, I think I was watching a very interesting YouTube video on the CEO of the Nothing phone company reacting to the launch, the reviews after the post-launch of the new Nothing phone. So it was it had a very divisive feedback, very contentious on certain aspects, but specifically to your point of training on certain things and how we've moved on as the world technologically. There's a new aspect that they added to the back of the phone, where it's a small screen, of which developers and even independent developers and you as yourself as a phone user can create an app to utilize this phone screen at the back. And one person's feedback was there's no manual or documentation on the internet on how to do this. And he was like, okay, this is valid feedback, of which we didn't think about. And it brings, to think, like, this is a big organization. They've been making phones for a number of years. For them to just think, people will get the hang of it and how to, use and make apps, really shows you how far we've come as a race.
Sometimes it comes as nudges, because it's not like you have to sit people down for you to train them. Sometimes it's more nudges. For example, when you sign up to a new application and you see it taking you through where to click. So if you want this, click here. If you want
and
this,
you skip everything.
Most of the time, yes, we skip, but sometimes that's the form of training that comes. And for example, in the WhatsApp, which I had mentioned, and even most messaging ones, they usually comes with a text from the company telling you we have integrated, we have integrated maybe AI to this. Maybe for you to get AI, you need to go here, and you can utilize it. Maybe the benefits now. To make calls, it will give you now a summary.
True. It's a very interesting discussion, because I think also as people coming from the technology side, you're the capacity builders, you're the trainers, we may tend to think that the users and the beneficiaries of the platforms we're building are moving at the same speed as us. You're still sticking on the same example of WhatsApp. When it started, it only had chat, no call, no video call, no status, no communities. It was just chat. You open the app, you you send the message to the person in your contact list, and over time it has developed and it has evolved into this very big tool. It's complex. I open it every other day and there's something new. You've mentioned AI. I realized that recently. I go to the search bar and there's a number of suggestions. Would you want to do this, this, and this? That was never there. So it has evolved to be this very complex tool for people who started as clients of WhatsApp, who started with the platform. You've seen it grow. You know when you open the app, what you intend to do, step 1, 2, 3. But maybe perhaps from the development perspective, I'm not saying this is something that the WhatsApp development team does, but generally might be an assumption held. I know I have those. If I've created a dashboard, I've seen through the iterations. I'll not be perhaps quick to say, okay, so this has changed. If you click on this, you'll get this. Most recently, there's a question that a stakeholder had been asking me about a dashboard that I developed. And I thought to myself, what if I add a tooltip that if you hover over, you'll get data, because, it's like, what does this bar represent? And I just quickly linked it. So today when we went into the meeting, and it was like, what does this bar represent? I moved my mouse. Like, for me, I know what the improvement that I made, what the tool was capable of doing, but I didn't document it or provide a nudge or, communication that, the next time you check it, this thing you're always trying to figure out, it's been fixed and you can check it through here. It was assumption in my mind that someone would naturally, try and pick it up. But now I understand that that's not the case, and you document and you caption everything.
Sometimes it assists, especially if there is adequate budget that is in place. It assists to have, because most of the time it's not just any developer. Even when you are a farmer, when you are so used to farming, it becomes second nature to you, and you assist, or rather you assume most people will pick it up, or rather they will know how to farm. So sometimes maybe organizations also can, especially maybe if it's a project manager or somebody else who can always be doing those documentations, because they know, especially this is a new thing, maybe I need to communicate this. So having that, but this is more or less, especially if it's a wide scale, kind of big thing that we are doing. But if it's a small scale, as you can tell us, or rather, we can always take a step back and look in terms of, maybe we need to
do
to communicate this.
For it indeed, and now linking multiple issues at once, I see the discussion is also becoming cohesive. At some point, you had mentioned the benefit and the beauty of mentorship in certain fields. I really appreciate people who take the time to explain something simply. And I even came to understand that being able to break down a complex issue very simply it denotes or it represents a good understanding of whatever it is you're trying to explain. It's much appreciated in a field like technology, which moves at an incredible pace.
And I think you had mentioned, especially in terms of us researching the new fields of, especially tech space is moving quite fast.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm trying to think on how organizations can they get updated, especially at the changing pace. For example, in 2019, 2020, AI wasn't the real buzz as right now.
Yeah.
Currently, everything and anything is getting an AI attached to it. Yeah. So basically, how can they get acquainted? Because, for example, if we developed a dashboard, maybe let's say with Power BI a few years back, maybe this person, those dashboards which we developed back in 2019 probably do not have those AI features, but right now I'm sure we can have a copilot attached to that for that simpler analysis. So what can organizations do, especially for them to get acquainted and stay updated? Because when they meet now the dev or rather that person developing, they can have, because it's good for you to have a discussion whereby you all know the benefits, and even you can challenge them to go and do their research. So what can they do for them to learn more about this?
Thanks, Dennis. I think on the first point, on a light note, understanding what AI means. But besides that, it's as I've grown older, I've come to understand that it's very idealistic and extremely unrealistic to expect that companies and organizations move at the speed of innovation. Very few are able to, and those very few, perhaps, a big portion are research institutes. They're required to keep up to date with what is changing in the field. That's the whole gist, the setup to push the boundaries of science. But for the rest of us who provide services, provide value products to people, especially working, say, just looking internally, having the newest or adopting the newest version of technology is not realistic. Number one, because you find the very few experts and the people who are there, very valuable. That's maybe attached to other places. But not only that, also, the capacity and the stability of newly adopted tools. There's always, that you can get into that discussion of, always keeping up to the latest versions of certain platforms or adopting the newest tools it can be more harmful than beneficial. But to answer your question on how do you keep abreast of new technologies, realistically set aside time and opportunity for people within your organization to have these discussions, knowledge sharing sessions that encourage people to innovate. If you're a technology company, host hackathons, have interactions, seminars with other people. Don't work in a bubble. See what other people are doing and whether it's better.
Yeah, sure. I resonate with all of them, actually, because I think all those strategies will give you the day-to-day. Though also in terms of management, I think especially when we are doing, or rather the organization are doing more or less annual plans. I'm sure they do a lot of SWOT.
Yeah.
And part of SWOT, or rather the opportunity and threats, we can always do a PESTEL kind of thing. And part of PESTEL is technology. So that's quite an important aspect for us, or rather for them to look at, especially technology shifts that are happening, and maybe try to see how will it impact their business. And within that, I think they can always get a business case in terms of, and always get that business case. I always advocate for that, because most of the time we usually run for the shiny things, but as you have mentioned, it might bring no value, or it might bring also harm in terms of whatever you're offering, or rather whatever you're trying to optimize. So basically looking in terms of what is this value add. Will it, by value, sometimes I try to categorize it into few aspects. So will it improve the experience? Will it have costs reduction? Will it reduce the time spent on task, or time spent on something? Or will it include more income within your pockets? So if it doesn't have those four aspects, there's no need for you to spend a lot of that. But also it's not just now, but also in terms of maybe it's not just present value, but also sometimes the future value, because so for example, if those four values, looking in terms of ATMs, some banks maybe they were back, rather that ATM era, they were still back on giving out cash. At that time when ATMs were coming, most of the time maybe ATMs were quite costly, because having that in terms of cost would go high, even cost of training people to use ATMs and etc. But over time you see that future value is is reducing, and it has return on investment. So not just present, but also future value of things as well. I think for them can be quite helpful.
Indeed. And even if I may add, if you're looking at it from a perspective as you as a service provider to the general public as a client, getting a good understanding of your client, doing that feasibility assessment. You did it while you're setting up the organization. Times change, but then over time you also supposed to continue developing that broader understanding of who is my client, who am I providing services to, and how does shift to certain methodologies, tools, or technologies affect them. If it's something that's an underlying technology, meaning it's an enabler to a service, you might not realize. For example, if Safaricom was to move from AWS today and adopt Azure, we might not notice. Maybe we'll be like, I think it's faster to buy airtime, But then if you're looking at it from a perspective of if Safaricom was to completely double down on their M-Pesa application and abandon the SIM toolkit, it's not going to be a good move from their end, because it kind of sort of denotes in this particular scenario a not so good understanding of who their client is. Yes, they want to keep up with the times and say, as long as you have a smartphone that can download an app, you can get our app and do your tools, it's faster. Good, well and good. It's a beautiful technology, but only to the people who can access it. The challenge is that a majority of Kenyans who actually use M-Pesa don't use a smartphone to access the apps. And that's the initial justification for the development of that platform to begin with. It was to bring on board the unbanked. It just so happened to be so beneficial that it brought the rest of us over, even though we had accounts. But then you see there's a demographic that it's trying to serve, and moving from a certain technology to another will not be beneficial, and then hence harmful. So it works not just for that big company. Of course, they probably have a good understanding, and that's why they're still in business. But for someone who's trying to break into the industry and perhaps adopt digital transformation in a particular area, say like agriculture, good understanding of the people you're serving and how you bringing a certain kind of technology or improving what you already have to a certain methodology will affect them. Maybe a web app looks better, but do a feasibility study on how many people actually or farmers sit on their laptops to access that service vis-a-vis using it on a mobile phone or
and also sometimes it's more or less the customer segment or rather who you are trying to get within that market, because different facets or rather different actions go with different customers. So for example, a mobile app for Safaricom might be quite useful for a person who is not even in the country but wants to send money because there's no network or other mobile coverage outside of the country as well. But also sometimes they might complement each other because having all these different, because apps sometimes have downtimes and you might need a USSD app because right now even I think Safaricom has a USSD option. So having these different and see how do they complement each other and see how can it work together. Awesome. It's been great having you. Any parting shot?
I think the parting shot that I would give is doing analytics with another domain, I believe, is a superpower. So gaining capacity and understanding all these other fields. There are a lot of problems to solve in the world, and definitely, technology can solve a large number of them. It's the understanding and a pure and true and sincere understanding of those domains that will be able to develop tangible, realistic, and beneficial solutions for them. And so I would encourage, people in a technological field such as I am to, get acquainted, do an honest assessment and study and interact with people in these fields as they contribute to them, and, make the world a better place.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time here, and
thank you, Dennis.
Great having you. Ciao.
Thanks for tuning in to Beneath the Impact, where we go beyond the numbers and narratives to uncover what really drives change. If today's conversation sparked a thought, shifted your perspective, or started a question, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode, subscribe, leave us a comment, and join the conversation online. You can find us at beneath.the.impact on all socials. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep digging beneath the impact.